Welcome. We're going to call the meeting to order of the City of Kearney Park Board, Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Ryan or Eric, have you taken roll?
I have taken roll. Everyone is present except Greg Gillahan. And I do need to mention, effective today, we received an email from Julie Jones submitting her resignation from the Park Board. So with that, I would want to say that Julie's been a faithful member of the Kearney Park Board for a number of years, and we are going to miss her. But one thing I do need, she was the secretary of the board, so I would need a nomination from all of you in a second and vote on a member of this board to serve as our secretary. So with that, if any of you have could nominate someone to be the secretary of the board in a second and then a vote.
Would anyone like to nominate someone for secretary?
When we want.
Do you want it?
Draw straws. Not necessarily. Do you?
I don't mind. Yeah.
Oh, good, then I nominate Ally.
I second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. Ally Jordan is our new secretary. Thank you, Ally.
Thank you.
And thank you, Julie, for
Yeah.
all your service. She's
We
been,
appreciate her years of service to our
Great.
Park and Tree Board.
she has been.
I would like to request that I'm added to the public requests.
To amend the agenda,
Thank you. To amend the agenda.
Okay,
we need a motion and second to amend the agenda.
so we need a motion to amend the agenda to add Ally as secretary? Is that what you're saying? No.
She wants
just
to amend the agenda.
Oh, something completely separate.
Yeah, I need to present
Okay,
something.
to amend the agenda.
I move that we amend the agenda to allow Ally to speak.
Thank you.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries.
Okay. Item 3.
All right, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the June 22nd meeting?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded that, please? Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries, minutes are approved. Public requests and petitions.
Sure. A couple of months ago, Rich Cole came before us with a brief presentation outlining the vision of the Veterans Memorial. If you may recall, many years ago, prior to some of you being on the board, there was a motion after a presentation of a memorial to be erected in Jesse James Park. In fact, the sign is still up at Jesse James Park. And that really never gained a whole lot of steam because it was an extravagant venture that they were trying to do. And a couple of months ago, Rich came before us, gave the presentation, and he asked if he could be placed on the agenda again because he has some other news. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rich. And Rich, again, for the record, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rich Cobb, and I live up by Mount Gilead at Church and School, and I'm at P.O. Box 362, Kearney 64060, obviously.
Okay,
Got it?
got it.
For those of you who were not here last time, as Eric mentioned, my name is Rich Cobb, and I used to be the editor of VFW magazine before I retired in 2016. During that time, I had a lot of experience with memorials, from across the country. I've probably dealt with hundreds of them over my time at the magazine. And I picked up quite a few pointers there on what to do and what not to do. And one of the first things I learned was don't get too extravagant. And I think when we started this project, we decided we were going to make it something that was meaningful, but that was something that was going to get accomplished in a relatively short time. Actually, let me introduce a couple of my co-conspirators here, Frank Johnson and Terry Butler. And they were in on it from the very start. With
Rich, Jerry Hearns.
Oh, Jerry? Nice to meet you, Jerry. I think, Jerry, were you in on the original? Okay. Jerry was in on the original group. Last time Terry Carter was here too. I guess he couldn't be here tonight. And fortunately, they set up a 501c3, which it's still in existence. It's in Kearney Trust Bank here. So where we stand right now is, if you can see the design, I think you've all seen it. You're looking at 6 feet tall, basically, 4 feet wide, and it's on a 2-foot footer. So, and that comes completely installed. So the cost of it is Johnson Granite's going to perform the installation and create the monument, and we're looking at $17,000 for that. Right now, we're fortunate. We had some people working behind the scenes for us, and we have 3 anonymous donors here in Kearney that have committed 60% of the cost. And we have a considerable amount in the account right now, and we plan to raise more. So we should have the total amount within a fairly decent amount of time. That is contingent upon park approval, though. So until we get the board's approval to place the monument in the park, those 3 anonymous donors will not be depositing any money in the account. So it's going to wait on that. And right now we're focusing exclusively on getting the memorial erected and dedicated. Anything that comes later, we bring that up before the board. But if we don't keep our focus exclusively on this memorial, I'm afraid we'll get sidetracked and we'll lose a lot of time. And theoretically, we'd like to get it dedicated by the Memorial Day in 2024. Anything else that we might add later on, like a flagpole, I think once we have that memorial in place, that's going to be a lot easier to do that. So we may want to include maybe a bench at some time for contemplation. We felt that the cost was very reasonable. Quite frankly, we thought it'd be more expensive than that, but Trip Johnson down here has really been an ally of ours. He's working real closely with us on this. In the meantime, what we'd like to do, we're going to need some help from the public. I'm 99% confident that I have all the names for the memorial, but you can never be 100% sure in that case. So we'd like to get the word out to the general public. Once we get those names out where people can see them, if we're missing anybody, I think that's when we'll find out. And we have there's one big blind spot when you do this kind of thing. During the Cold War, like from the late 1940s up through the 1970s, there's no database you can go to and check on names. All the other wars you can check on them. If there's been a big accident sometime or another, plane accident or a ship, you can usually go and you can find all those names and you can check the hometowns. But during the Cold War, there were a lot of plane crashes throughout the world. A lot of them were major with 20 or more people killed, but there were a lot of them that were maybe 4 or 5. And when I was doing research for this memorial, I'll be darned if I didn't find somebody from some tiny town in Missouri that was on one of those planes that crashed. So we can't be 100% sure that someone wasn't from up in our area. But I don't think that's the case, but you never know for sure. The other area is if someone died years later of wounds or physical injuries. So an example of that is for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in DC, there's been guys that have been added to that memorial that died 46 years later from their wounds that they received in Vietnam. So if somebody was from Kearney, and they were wounded in Korea and they died 10 years later, that's just not going to show up in the records. That would have to come directly from the family. So until we can get some outreach going and confirm those names, we won't be 100% sure in that regard. The other thing is, with the 14 names that we do know, we want to have some personal stories because we want to create a dedication program. And in that dedication program, we're going to want as much biographical information as we can get, and we'll want their photos. And obviously, the only place we're going to get those is from family members. So that's another case where until we conduct this outreach, we're not going to be 100% sure. The one good thing is I've talked to Jerry Spencer over at the Kearney Historic Museum, and she already has 6 of the photos. So they're all World War II. We've got a step ahead of the game in that regard. What we'd like to do is create a memorial book and place it over there. And if you've been over there, you've seen that cabinet. There's a cabinet with a lot of photos in it. People contributed photos from their families when the museum opened. So we thought that would be a perfect place to put a memorial book. If people wanted to learn more about these individuals, we could direct them over to the museum, and they could visit the museum, and we'd get 2 things accomplished at once. The other thing, of course, to accomplish these 2 goals, we need some publicity. And we'd like to see if we could get a story in the Courier Tribune in that regard. In order to do that, I'm sure the Courier Tribune's going to want to have, know that the Parks Board has approved our idea. So that's another step. We're kind of at a stopping point right now as far as publicity and for raising money, because we really can't go out and start asking businesses or individuals for any funds until we can tell them positively that we're going to have this in Jesse James Park. So that's pretty much where we stand right now. The one thing that I did want to mention since last time too is that after I came here, it was previous to Memorial Day. And I went to 2 Memorial Day services. I went to one in Smithville and I went to one in Liberty. And after attending those, it really became clear to me how perfect Jesse James Park is for Memorial, because Kearney really does deserve a site of remembrance for, it's a focal point for both Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies. And we don't have that, and it'd be nice to have it. We have the perfect green space out there in the park. The other thing is, it'd be a perfect source of education for kids in school, because they could take many field trips out there. It'd be like a little walk through history, and they could learn about these 14 peoples, because the more distance we place between the wars and the people that served in them, the less people are thinking about that. It's just not a topic that's on their mind. Fortunately, Afghanistan and Iraq have been over for a little while now, but the bad thing about that is it goes out of the public consciousness too. So I think the sooner we can erect something like this, we can keep it in people's minds. And finally, if you're familiar with any of these family names, you might know they're spread out. Of the 14, about 11 of them are in cemeteries around this region. Some of their gravestones, you can't even read them anymore, the World War I guys. 2 were MIAs, their bodies were never recovered, so they're recognized in Hawaii and overseas in Korea. And then 1 is actually buried in Arlington. So this would give us an opportunity to have all 14 of them in one place and recognized and honored in one spot. And I think they deserve that. I think most veterans, if you talk to them, their first priority is always to see that the guys that lost their lives are recognized, and that's what we're trying to do right now. So if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do that.
I have one, Rich. Looking, and I think the granite just looks beautiful. Ryan and I were visiting today about that. Is there going to be enough room in case others perish where names could be added?
Yes. Okay. We thought of that. Now, Tripp said that you can see the first ones. He said there is room to add another name under each war. So if you look under Afghanistan, Vietnam, you'll see that there is a space there.
Okay.
So if you got into a pinch, we could put names next to the battlefield cross too. So we have room to do that there. It wouldn't be in the exact same order, but at least the names would be on there.
Sure.
The only one that I'm thinking that we might have someone else come up is World War II, because we want to let anybody that had a connection to Kearney or Holt in Paradise, we want them to be on this memorial. So if say for instance, somebody was born in Kearney, their family moved away when they were 15 years old, and they joined the Army in a different county. You know, a lot of times that county would put their name on the memorial, but we still wouldn't want to exclude them. And in those kind of cases, you know, it's tough to track those people down. So we may have somebody come up and say, hey, look, you missed my brother. You know, we lived here for 20 years in Kearney, and then my parents moved us to 3 counties away just before the war started, and he enlisted there, so he's listed as coming from that county. So we want to make sure those kind of people are on the memorial too. And just to point out, we're not just talking about somebody that was actually killed in action in the war. We're talking about anybody that lost their life on active duty. So if they were in the service during peacetime, it doesn't matter whether it was 1982 and they were stationed in New Jersey and they lost their life in a Jeep accident, we want them on the memorial. So we don't want to exclude anybody in that sense. I'll give you a good example of that is they have a little memorial over in Smithville in the cemetery there. And one of the names, they dedicated it in 1950 and they list everybody as World War II. But in fact, 2 of them were Cold War guys. One of the guys was killed in an accident in 1947 down in Mississippi. Had nothing whatsoever to do with World War II. But he was on that memorial, and we'd want to have that kind of person on this one too.
Well, then you might have more people to add for the Afghanistan one, right?
Shouldn't be.
My brother was in Afghanistan as a Marine. You know,
Yeah, but I mean,
passed
as far as anybody else getting killed in Afghanistan, obviously, we shouldn't be having that problem.
He
again.
said killed in active duty.
Oh, but then I thought I heard in an accident down south afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Did I mishear that? I may have.
Yeah, no, I did say, yeah.
But that's still active duty.
Well, he was on that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I gotcha.
So if somebody was on active duty and they were killed in an accident, a plane crash, a ship collision, a Jeep accident, or let's say they were severely injured, and 10 years later they died of that injury and it's directly related to that accident and that can be shown that that was the cause, we definitely want that person on there. Because every year they add new names to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in DC, and most of those are generally guys that had been wounded and they didn't die until many years after that. The families usually petition the Defense Department. Once the Defense Department okays it and says we agree that it was a direct result of that accident, then the memorial can place their name on it.
Right.
So and that would be the same case here too. So, and I've gotten a list of names for every military action since World War II where at least one American was killed, and I've gone through every catastrophic military accident, like a big plane crash when a submarine sunk and all the crew members were killed, and I've checked all their names. A good example of that is the USS Scorpion. It was a submarine that went down in 1968. Believe it or not, it had a crew of 99, but 6 of those guys were from Missouri alone. So you just never know. None of them were ARIA, none for Clay County or Kansas City. They were spread out throughout Missouri. But you can't know it, until you get that word out. So that's what we'd like to do right now, is get that word out. So before they start etching any names on the granite, we'd like to be sure about that.
Right.
Any other questions I can answer?
You said it's about 6 feet tall.
Yes.
How tall are the letters, like on this?
That's a good question. I don't know how tall those letters are. Do you have any idea, Frank? No. I don't.
Is the soldier's cross, is it a 3-dimensional or is it carved into the granite?
Carved. Yeah. And what we wanted to do is achieve 2 things with that. The gold star is obviously for Gold Star families. And the Battlefield Cross is for veterans are going to identify with that, especially if they were in that unit with somebody that's named on here. So the memorial, in a sense, specifically is for 2 groups of people. Number 1, the individual and veterans that served with them, and then 2, equally important, is the families. And that's going to be extremely important around here because, you know, quite frankly, there's not going to be a lot of guys coming through that actually served in that unit with these fellows, especially going all the way back to World War II. So, and I have actually been in contact with one family member already. Frank Marsh is a descendant of Clinton Marsh. He's from Holt, and he was killed in World War I in France, and he's an interesting story. I think this would have been like his grand uncle, somewhere like that. He still lives over in Holt, Frank Marsh does. And he said, Doug Marsh, I'm sorry. And he said that at that time, one of his cousins actually was in the army in France, and he was the one responsible for bringing his body home. Else, he would have still been buried in France somewhere in the cemetery. So that's just an example. You run across all these great human interest stories when you're digging into that. In the case, like for instance, with Mac Porter's brother, E. Howard Porter, he was way past draft age. He was too old. He wasn't going to be drafted. He was working for the aircraft industry out in Southern California. And then he heard that a friend of his from Smithville was killed when he was flying a plane across the English Channel. And he just felt like he should join. And so he went, when he enlisted, and then he was a pilot in China. He flew the hump over the Himalayan mountains, and he was killed in a plane crash in China. And ironically, his second daughter was born on VJ Day. So he left behind a wife and 2 daughters, one of whom he never saw. So you run into those kind of stories all throughout. Even with the minimal number of people we're talking about, with 14, there's great human interest stories there. Anything else I can answer?
So we need a motion to proceed to approve the memorial and to proceed with the planning.
Right, and as everything, this would go to the Board of Aldermen for their final approval. I would take this plan to the Board of Aldermen because it is a new plan and it's different from the original one. And I would take that, put that on the agenda, visit with Sheila and place that for approval at the next Board of Aldermen.
Another quick question, is this going to be lit at all? Is there any lighting involved with this? And that's all going to be paid for by your fund?
The previous group, and Terry's not here, right? They had discussed this with Clay. And at that time, they did find somebody that said they would contribute that in kind. So that's going to be one of our next steps. We're going to have to go out and find in-kind contributions. It's going to require a minimal amount of landscaping because, as you can see, it's not all that large. So a lot of this cleanup and things like that we can do ourselves. But there are things like that we're going to have to arrange, yes.
And is there lighting near there yet, right now?
There is not. No.
There's not anything close to
They
that?
still close the park at 10.
It's usually around 10, 11 o'clock at night.
And open early in the morning.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know that there'd be a need to light this if we put a flagpole
Put a flag
out
up,
there
you will.
eventually, that'd be lit. There wouldn't be really a need for lighting on this.
Well, in the winter months though, it does get darker.
I would like to get lighting on it for, and as we've discussed before, having security cameras and everything.
Yeah.
Those work a lot better when you have light.
Sure.
Yeah, it would look nice lit up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all we'd be looking at, we're just one flagpole. We don't want to turn this into the United Nations flag
Right.
way out there.
Right.
And here's an example. This is done at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial up in DC. And they have the flagpole, they have the American flag, and then they have a POW MIA flag underneath it. And that's 58,000 names. So people that go to the memorial in DC aren't going there to see the flag, they're going there to see the names. But we all agreed that this has to have an American flag. I mean, we're not going to put up a memorial without that. But it doesn't, we don't want it to be the prominent feature. We want what you're seeing on that screen to be the prominent feature, so. Frank, do you have anything to add? Terry?
All right, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the memorial and allow them to continue their planning?
I'd like to make that motion.
Anyone second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Second was,
Lisa.
thank you, Lisa. I will take this to the Board of Aldermen because the Board of Aldermen is the ultimate say.
Okay.
And I will visit with our city administrator and get this placed on the agenda.
Okay.
We need to be there, you think, or a representative or something?
It would be nice in case the board does have any questions for you. Dan is our board liaison to the Board of Aldermen. So I will let you know when that will be placed on the agenda. Rich, we correspond a lot via email,
Right.
so I will,
Okay.
as soon as I find something out, definitely, I will be in contact with
Do
you.
you have any rough idea what time frame we're looking at?
Well, the Board of Aldermen meets on the first and third Mondays of the month,
Okay.
okay? And they meet at 6:30 and they meet right here.
Okay.
So as soon as I find something out, as soon as I can, I will email you back.
Okay, well, that's great, and I'd be happy to come. I mean, if you need me to fill
Sure,
in.
I'll find out the extra details and
Okay,
let you know,
good.
okay?
Thank
thanks
you
a lot.
for,
Thank
thank you for the
Appreciate
work
you
that
having
you've
us.
done.
That's great.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right, Lauren Osborne.
Thank you for coming again, all of you. We appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we have that going. Hi.
Hi,
Marianne, good to see you again. I have, like last time, a lot of information for you. I'm gonna kind of tell you what's been going on the last several months. Before I do that, again, my name's Lauren Osborne. Can you hear me now?